Hi, this morning as I was putting away some books, I remembered a wonderful book that I read some time ago. The book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And one of the things that I remembered about that book is the first habit: start with the end in mind. And he also says, first things first. And that reminded me about learning objectives. Have you asked yourself, what is the end objective of your course for your participants? We'll talk about this today. My name is Max Quiroz from Max en Route Training, and I welcome you to this video. And today, as I was telling, we're going to talk about learning objectives. And what are learning objectives? For us, learning objectives are something similar to what you're seeing right there on your screen. When the mountain climbers try to reach the summit of Mount Everest, first they must go to the base camp and spend about a month there getting used to the altitude, getting used to the climate, to the temperature. And then after a month, when they are used to the conditions, to the environmental conditions, they start climbing. They go first to Camp 1, that is located at 5,943 meters height. Then they go to Camp 2, Camp 3, and finally they reach Camp 4. And from Camp 4 up to the summit, there's just about 2,000 and 2,200 feet of difference, of height difference. But they must leave Camp 4 at 2 or 3 in the morning to reach the summit at noon the next day. Even though it's a short distance, the height is so big there, the altitude is so great that it's a tremendous effort to keep going. And finally, the successful mountain climber reaches the summit. And that's exactly how we must think about learning objectives. Learning objectives are those camps that can be found on the way to the summit. And the summit is the final objective that we want our participants to achieve at the end of our course or program. That's exactly the way we must see learning objectives. And I know many people tell us, oh Max, learning objectives are so boring or tedious or hard writing learning objectives. They can be. But if you learn about learning objectives, your programs will never be the same again. Your programs will change and your programs will be effective, and you will find that your participants are achieving the goals and objectives that you set for them in the very beginning. So that's why I remembered Stephen Covey, because whenever you design a course or program, you have to start with the end in mind. And there's different words that are floating around when we speak about learning objectives. There's learning objectives, teaching objectives, educational intentions, and all these words have been changing, and they change constantly. But the important thing here is that we must always work with learning objectives, because learning objectives are stated in terms of what the participant will be able to do at the end of our program. And that's fundamental to understanding and to using learning objectives correctly. If you say the teacher will use and show and will demonstrate, those are teaching objectives. Those are stated in terms of what the teacher will do or what he will or she will demonstrate. Those are not learning objectives. If you say the students will lead a better life, that is an educational intention. You cannot measure that. It's very difficult to measure that. So you must always state and develop learning objectives. And when we say you must learn how to do it, it's because there's certain rules for stating and developing learning objectives. There's different parts that they must contain. So it's important that we learn how to do it. And when we learn how to do it, our programs will always, or most of the times, will be effective, and we will achieve that goal that we set for our participants from the very beginning. And exactly the same as we saw on the slide and the picture of Mount Everest, there's different levels, there's different campsites at different heights, altitudes. It's exactly the same thing with learning objectives. There are different levels of objectives. We start with a general or global objective of our course, a final objective. What will the participant be able to do at the end of our course? And then we start breaking up that big objective into smaller chunks. And we go to detail. First, we work with specific learning objectives that must tell us what the participant must be able to do. For example, what happens when you're learning to addition, when you're in math, when you're learning addition, the participant will be able to do mathematical operations, additions with two-digit numbers. That's the learning objective. If he's able to do that, he has attained what we achieve him to do. And then we bunch up several specific learning objectives, and then we achieve an intermediate learning objective. And after we achieve several intermediate learning objectives, we can say that the participant has achieved the final objective or the global objective of our course or program. And that's why it's very, very important to understand that you cannot go exactly as what happens in Mount Everest. You cannot go from the base camp to the summit in one day. You have to go by stages, little by little. Exactly the same thing happens in our courses or programs. We cannot expect our student or participant to go from 0 to 90 in an instant. He must go through different steps, through different levels of objectives. And that's the beauty of it. It helps you guide the participant through different activities, through different levels, until he has achieved that final objective. And that's why it's important to identify and state objectives for all levels for the participants in our course. And then we have to talk about taxonomy of objectives. And don't be scared with the word taxonomy. It's a strange word that it's not used a lot, but what taxonomy means is a classification of objectives. And just as the guy in the picture is putting different pieces of different equipment in different bins in that wall, we can place objectives in 3 different and big categories, 3 of them, and we'll talk about them. The first category, or domain as we call them, domains, is the cognitive domain, and that has to do with content, with knowledge. Most of the objectives that we state in our courses or programs are of this domain. For example, in school when we learn biology, geography, history, maybe some aspects in math, those are learning objectives of the cognitive domain. If your participants need to know different concepts, then you must state and develop learning objectives of the cognitive domain. And it's important to note that here we also have different levels. It depends on the knowledge they have and where we want to take them, to what new level we want to take them. So it's important that we know that we must guide them in this upwards journey. The psychomotor domain is the second category of objectives, and this has to do, if you've been to a cooking class, to a painting class, if you learn how to scuba dive, all those activities and all those courses must have learning objectives of the psychomotor domain, because psychomotor domain has to do with skills and abilities to do something. For example, I don't know if you know this about us, but we are scuba diving instructors. And one of the things that you must learn from the very beginning is how to put on your diving mask and your fins, diving fins, underwater. You jump into the water with your fins and your mask in your hand, and you must come out of the water with your mask on, without water in it, and with your fins, wearing your fins. Those are certain skills. You need to manage some skills, and you need to learn some skills to be able to do it. And that's what we try to use the learning objectives of the psychomotor domain to teach skills. Today, all of us use computers, but maybe when we started, they had to tell us how to turn on the computer, how to open a different application or software, and we had to learn some skills, sets of skills, and steps, different steps to carry out some actions. Those are learning objectives of the psychomotor domain. So if you're going to teach a computer course, or you are going to teach a course on how to use Zoom to deliver online classes, you must state and develop objectives of the psychomotor domain. That's the second domain of objectives. And the last but not least objective domain is the affective domain. And the affective domain is essential for coaches and instructors that work with personal development. Everybody that works with attitudes and values must include learning objectives of the affective domain, because those objectives have to do with the development of attitudes and value systems in the participant. And if we are able to see how they go through this journey, going up level by level until they are able to have a set of values, then we need learning objectives of the affective domain. And those are, in general way, in a big and a fast and quick overview of objectives, of learning objectives and their importance. Now, we can teach a whole course about learning objectives, but if you want to know more, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel by clicking on the button that you'll find here on the left side corner or the right hand corner of your screen. I'm seeing it in reverse. And please activate the bell so that you get notified whenever we upload a new video. We hope this video is helpful for you. Have a great day and see you in the next one.